Oh, hi, everybody. My name is Matt Storrs, and welcome to Mattsplaining. On today's episode, I have an expert on who I'm very excited to speak with. Expert, please introduce yourself and tell us what you're an expert in.
Hey everyone, my name is Ben Dantowitz, and I am an expert in the sport of roundnet.
Fantastic. I have been a proponent of roundnet for some time because it's one of those sports that has a very ancient and intricate history. One of those sports that, like with basketball and like football and stuff like rugby, you can pin it down, those sports, to one culture and one society that kind of developed those things. Whereas round net has a connection to many different cultures and many different ways that it originated. And I believe that but the thing was, it's, very similar to how the pyramids, we have pyramid shapes in South America and then in Egypt and, various places around the world. And oh, how did these all happen at relatively the same time? Similarly, with RoundNet, the same sort of thing that, oh, maybe there's some sort of alien connection that these aliens came and taught us this game. Because there's so many similarities from each of these cultures and how it is
Mhm.
performed and played. And I believe that originally in most places, at least in the South American origins, there was a set of skin that was stretched as the around the round area, the circular area. The wheel, one of the first inventions, the wheel itself, was actually created to play round net as opposed to move things around. They were like, hey, we want to be able to play this game. How can we do it? And they developed the wheel, and then they would stretch animal skins. Some people say that they were using human skin, but as you probably know, human skin, the elasticity isn't as good when you want something to bounce off of it. So I don't think that they were using human skin as the net, so to speak, because it just wouldn't have been effective. Some animals had really good and effective skin for that, the tanning procedures and everything like that. And so they were able to start playing this game, and they would use various balls. Some people say there's this pretense that it's this violence and everything like that, but it wasn't violence that they were going for. They were wanting to have joy and bring a community together so that people could understand the laws of physics as this ball would bounce off and like in different directions, and oh, how do I catch it? Who bounces it back? Who was in charge? And build rapport with people and not necessarily have it be full competitive like some of the other sports that we're developing, where it would be really aggressive and everything like that. But it was like you could really get to know what people's skills were. And so then it's okay, that person's really good at, noticing the trajectory of these things. And then this guy's really good at spiking the ball really well. We can go out and we can hunt together, and we could find the mastodon, or I guess that would be a little bit too far back, but we can find the buffalo, we could find the wildebeest, we could find the crocodile even, and we could hunt them really effectively. So the crocodile would jump out of the water, and then one of them would come in from the side really effectively with their spear and get them. And the other one would then come down and spike from above. And that was a really effective method to hunt back then. And some people would say today as well. And I think that's the lasting tradition that RoundNet really provides, is helping people come together, but also giving them, much like Tai Chi provides people the methods and steps to be able to understand how to deflect attacks. If they end up in a situation where they do need to hunt, where they do need to use these practical skills, they can really effectively throw a rock down on something, or and then know, is that rock going to bounce back? Crocodilian skin, famously very, very elastic. The risk of a rock or a spear coming back at you, pretty decent there, very dangerous. And that really helps if people are in extreme circumstances, or they do need to resort to these sorts of things, and they're able to acclimate to them very quickly. And I think that's one of the lasting things of a game like this, and a sport, honestly, too. There's been a lot of people that have been wanting to perpetuate it, get this sport into more recognized areas, whether it is broadcast TV or the Olympics, the ESPN 8, the Ocho, they've been constantly trying to find new and new sports. And one of the things that they have butted up against is dodgeball is something that people can look into and say, oh, there's some initial humor there. People watch this sport and they're like, oh, there's so much more skill to this. They're like, can we really justify putting it on the Ocho? Can we find other space for this? Because people are like, it's so fast and engaging that there's less of the time for the bits, whereas something like dodgeball or corgi racing and stuff like that leaves a lot of space for bits, and that's really what that channel builds off of. Now, based on what you've heard so far, about how much of that would you say was accurate?
I'm so impressed, Matt. I think so much of that really struck to the core heart of RoundNet. You touched on so much of the like getting connected to people and knowing people, establishing like who's got what kinds of skills. I even the elasticity of how, maybe not necessarily animal skins, but more like different tension of nets
I
is
see.
is pretty spot on.
Okay.
But yeah, I do think I need to correct a couple of small things if you don't mind me
Yes,
adding in
absolutely.
here. As you noted, yeah, there's this really rich history of this sport. It didn't go quite as far back as you might have researched, which maybe just leaves more to be discovered by other, people that are anthropologists. But I do know that the toy of a spike ball was invented in 1989,
Okay.
right here in the US. And then through the decades, really in the late 2000s, a company was founded to take this game, this toy that did bring a lot of people together, had so much joy and community around it, and started to formalize the process of building out this sport. And as you mentioned, even that shout for trying to figure out how do we get this sport to be showcasing the skills people have, where it's been on ESPN, the Ocho years ago, and then more recently it's progressed to having broadcasts on ESPN2. So we're trying to get all the way up to ESPN1 as a sport
Okay.
for RoundNet, but it has been on this journey, as you mentioned, of bringing a lot of people together. Something really that I love about it, and a lot of people get brought into it, is you're playing in a really small space, and so compared to other sports where the field is stretched out a bit, you're not really interacting that closely with not only your teammate but your opponents. So it's a much more like friendly environment where um, you can see everyone's faces and you get to chatter and trash talk between points and build a little bit of banter up. And so it is a really social thing. And a lot of people come into it because it's a really fun social thing. And then building on top of that, the real challenge and some of the fun stuff that I get to work on top of thinking about how I get to use it as a third space for myself is how can we legitimize this sport to try to solve the problems of making it a thing that more people want to watch, more people want to play, and ultimately can be like a commercially successful sport, not just a backyard game, something that's just on the Ocho. Yeah, I think your backstory is like pretty spot on for the most part. I'd give you like an A minus if I was teaching and giving out grades.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. I did not expect a rating that high. Thank you.
I don't know if
You
I should
go
deduct
ahead.
more
Go ahead.
points because you're talking about human skin being elastic and stuff like that, but a lot of people do get concerned about the elasticity of the nets that we hit the ball off of. So I feel thematically it's right there.
Perfect. Great. Yeah, I can't speak to the specifics of human skin elasticity. Unfortunately, I haven't done a sufficient research. But yeah, what kind of brought you to this game?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people that play around it and maybe play other games like it, you just are, I'm the kind of person that is pretty open to new games, new experiences. And when I was first introduced to this one, in particular, I have a history of not great success playing higher contact sports.
Mhm.
And so this was one where it was a little bit safer for me to get involved in it and run around and play. That initial on ramp for me was very easy. And I was able to immediately, within weeks actually of first hearing about the game, my older brother brought me out to like a regional tournament where we were not very good, but it allowed me to really quickly see how talented, skillful some other people could get. So I very quickly got exposed to what it looked like when you were grinding your skill level and really progressing as an athlete to have a lot of fun doing it. That it was like most things, it's more fun when you get a little bit better. So I was very quickly shown that it would be more fun if I put my time into it. And then all of a sudden, I continued to do that, and that really snowballed into not only caring about pursuing it as a sport and an outlet for myself physically, but also then trying to seek out social communities where other people wanted to play this newer, really niche sport and start to think about, okay, if we all care about it, how do we think about legitimizing more of it and building systems and community structure so that it can be a thing that isn't just a fad or a one-off, but it really is just like any other sport, more normalized and more socially accepted into just the fabric of games and sports we play. So that's been my journey. Definitely had a lot of fun getting to do not just the playing side of it, but a lot of the like community building, like world building, creative work around it, and thinking about how we can continue to chart the path forward where there's lofty goals like trying to make it an Olympic sport that I take a little bit of my time, just like a couple other people, and pour energy into. But yeah, there's just so many fun goals that I've been able to get out of this work, and not just being active, but also getting to just pursue fun experiences. Like I mentioned, ESPN2 versus ESPN8, I got to have the privilege of working towards some productions that made their way on ESPN2 to share the story and the fun of our sport and community. I've gotten a lot out of it for all the passion I've put into it.
That's fantastic. That seems like that it is so consistently fun to be able to get to do it and then see it grow as well. With if somebody was looking, what do you think is the like ideal candidate for somebody to pick up this game?
It's a really good question. I think um, the number one trait I see in most people that like not only get started but get into it is like that little bit of humility. Just
Mhm.
because, like I mentioned, when I first started playing, I saw some people that were really talented. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I want to pursue that. I never got to that level. I got better, but I never got to be the best. And I think a lot of people, and this is true for maybe other sports and hobbies and passions too, is, oh, I could do that. And maybe it's hard to appreciate the technicality and the understanding at a deeper level to build up the skills, being able to control a ball and actually be able to pass it and spike it well so that um, it's not just thinking about what you want to do, but actually being able to execute on it. And I've seen a lot of people that come in and they're really excited, have fun with it, and their expectations is going to be fun, and then they always keep it fun. And even if they don't get better at the fastest pace, they still stick around and get to really enjoy the time and space. Versus sometimes people come in and they're like, I want to be the best tomorrow, and that maybe goes well for them for a day or two, but it doesn't really mean that they have as good of a time or have as much fun out of it over the long term. That's my recommendation. Is if you're someone who wants to try a new thing and explore some different skill sets, maybe work on your footwork, your little hand-eye coordination, a little bit of cross training for some athletes too. It definitely can pay off in those ways.
Absolutely. And where is like the best place to play? Like I've seen people play this, or at least I believe I've seen them play this in the park. Is that typically where you see most people playing, or are there like other places that are more conducive to playing?
Yeah, parks are definitely top of the list. I think a
Okay.
really interesting challenge of Round It is like it's such a small game. If you haven't seen it, it can fit really in a 10 by 10 like meter or 10 by 10 like yards worth of space for a single game, which is awesome. And you can have a lot of people playing games next to each other and fitting that way. But because it can fit in lots of places, the dual edge that is sometimes it's hard to find where to get started, where people can even meet because it's not like it has a specific basketball court or a baseball diamond where everybody congregates to play. You could play it almost anywhere. Really, it depends sometimes like city by city or state to state. There's different people. And of course, around the world too, there's lots of countries and cities that are also really actively organized. And so some people have better luck. Some people can really go look up the name of your city and round it or the name of your city. And Spikeball is like the biggest brand around the sport. So that sometimes also helps with SEO. And those people can really quickly find their local park or maybe their beach to go play. And other people might have a little bit less luck. Maybe it's more off to the side and someone's playing it just with their friends and their buddies in the backyard still. And they haven't really tapped into the public spaces yet. I know for my part, I really want to play more in public spaces because it has that really good availability to be sharing the game. I feel like the other big common place to find it is a college quad. A lot of
Totally.
college quads, a lot of time to play between classes. I know I was one of those kids back in the day too. I think that's maybe the most common place you might see it played is in front of campus.
Absolutely. Is there a place that you prefer or that would be your preference with playing? Like a like an ideal
Hmm.
location?
Yeah, I not necessarily location as much as maybe surface. I think like the big three are probably sand, turf, and grass. And I think sand is like a really fun, like casual vibe where in a more formal setting for around it, you might need to mark like lines and have like, certain boundaries where people have to start the point, where people are restricted on how they play, how they hit the ball, versus on sand you don't. So for me, I personally love playing on grass because I can mark the lines for more serious play, but also I can still follow the ground and not worry about cutting up my body like I might on turf with all the turf
Right.
burns. Some people also really like turf because it's flat and consistent and fair. If you need to run and go track down a ball that is hit really far away, you're going to run on flat ground versus if you're playing on grass or sand, you're playing against the elements as well as your opponents. Everybody has their picks their poison.
Absolutely. This has been so insightful and so fascinating. If people wanted to learn more about you or more about the sport, where would you recommend that they go?
Yeah, I do talk a little bit about the sport of roundnet. I have a YouTube channel, it's just under my name. And if you want to hear some deep dives and just the lore of how the sport has been built and how it's been really challenging to get through the steps, I have a playlist called Roundnet Things where I just talk about all things Roundnet. And I think the only other place I'd point you is if you're curious for what the sport looks like and maybe haven't heard of it much before, I work on some video editing for a separate YouTube channel called Round Network, a little bit of a pun on the word Roundnet and like a sports network.
That's
And
great.
those are the two best places to go if you're curious about what I'm up to or things that I've made to share the sport and the love of Roundnet.
Absolutely fantastic. Ben, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. I feel like I learned a lot, and I hope the listeners have as well.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
Absolutely. My name is Matt Storrs, and this has been Mattsplaining.